How goes everyone? Why is everyone so far away? We've got seats right here at the front. Come on. There we go. Yeah.
It's almost like they know it to be kids.
Shh. I enjoy the number of capes that are going on right now.
I guess the court elsewhere. Mm-hmm. I want that court. Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much for coming. This is an immersion catch-up panel, so for those of you who've been paying attention the whole weekend, congratulations. You can take out your notes and see if we did everything right.
Define right.
Yeah. Yeah. So who's been here all weekend? Oh, good. So you saw it.
Well, did you see it? I know some folk did manage to still miss a bit of what happened yesterday.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning.
It's a very good place to start.
Yeah. When we arrived here in London, the hour was dark. Swarm forces had taken all of Europe. We had lost all of the great capitals, from Minsk to Berlin to Paris, and London was threatening to be next. We knew that we needed to make a decisive move. One final stroke. There was much debate. Captain Croft, would you like to tell us a bit about the planning process?
Well, don't get up on me just because I'm Crown Prince now. Just saying, but I'm totally Crown Prince now.
I'm sure they've all heard. Everyone has.
Did I mention that I'm Crown Prince now?
No, we haven't.
Wait, what? Please regale us.
I'm the Crown Prince now.
Your Highness.
We're getting to that.
We'll get there.
Spoilers,
sweetie.
We're skipping ahead a bit, Father.
Spoilers, sweetie.
So,
But sir, if you're Crown Prince, where's your crown?
I am Crown Prince because I am heir apparent, and as you can see, my heir is different this morning. This is what happens when you become a prince. Soon it will happen to Montgomery.
yes.
You are recounting the terrible events of yesterday.
Well, we're getting to that.
We're trying to.
We still have to start at the beginning.
Spoilers,
But then,
terrible
you know,
events.
The new Tresemme hair model showed up.
You were saying, Captain Croft.
Yeah, it was. So, as we were planning for the battle, we disagreed politely, for lack of a better term, on the approach that would be used. Some of us felt a more
Going to sit by you.
intelligent tactic would have been better to spread out Swarm and attack them, chip them away, piece by piece. Silverstar seemed to have a different approach that involved a very large balloon with a gun.
A balloon is a non-rigid structure, so no.
You're a non-rigid structure.
I'm a very rigid structure.
Promote the case.
They had a very large ship with a very large gun. Due to time restraints and the imminent attack of Swarm, we all agreed to support this weapon and its use.
I think a good thing to point out is one of the factors that determined that we were running low on time was an attack in Scotland. Parliament was being held in a secret location that only a handful of people knew, and that attack lost us Queen Victoria and all of Parliament. Since then, we have been trying to dig through the rubble, hoping and praying for a survivor, but there have been none. And it was that massive loss that made us realize we unfortunately did not have time for a better plan.
Nor did we have the Parliament to help us devise a better plan. All we had left was, conveniently, Lord Barnes.
Once a plan that we've had all along, but we kept secret from you because it was a secret.
Because it was a horrible idea.
It was a great idea.
Let's get to that.
So,
Okay, it wasn't so great the way it ended.
Saturday dawned, and just as we thought we were building up all of your expectations and building up all of your excitement so that we could have a strong fighting spirit when the battle happened, the battle happened. That's the trouble with...
basket and some eggs.
Yeah,
I'm so tired of eggs.
made a really big omelette for the last
We've
day.
removed all chickens from the land because of
Seriously.
this.
Sheep and cows only in England now. No
Yeah.
poultry. Nevermore.
It's the basket that matters.
We'll move all of the poultry to Guernsey or something.
Yeah, no one goes to
We're
Guernsey.
quite familiar with your basket case, Father.
It's the basket of friendship, and don't talk about your Uncle Wolfie.
During a rally to get the troops ready, a surprise attack began. The air raid sirens and death ray sirens were sounded, and the command staff had to rocket up to the airship platform. From the airship platform, Captain Croft deployed the fleets, including all of our ships, and the one final weapon, the SS Britannia. Admiral, would you like to talk about the Britannia?
We can more openly talk about it.
Yeah.
It's not a secret at all now.
No, it's not.
And if it is, you're not paying attention.
The Britannia. That's my pin right here, because she's my baby. She's my baby. The Britannia is the greatest ship ever built, and along the primary line structure of it is a forward-firing cannon that uses hyper-energized etheric energy to emit a pulse, which is capable of rending and unrending materials at fantastic oscillations. We knew that this would be one of the only weapons we could have. You see, during the time since the armistice with the forces of Schwarm, we have been rebuilding our world, putting in hospitals, schools, rebuilding houses, roads, railways. Schwarm was concentrating only on one thing, and they had always been. Even before the peace, they were preparing for the Second Ether War. They were building airships, they were building tic-tac mens, they were conscripting forces in the Far East. They were creating war machines in greater volume and with greater technology of production than mankind has ever seen. Our path of trying to build a future was the right path for us. Their treachery proved that it would prove our undoing unless we could respond to the overwhelming force with which they could attack us. They drove us from the continents, as I believe Commodore has already, because there was nothing yet made that could withstand the onslaught. Finally, yesterday, as the swarm forces, having massed on the French coast, moved over towards London, we were able to move them into a centralized area, drawing them with feinting maneuvers from their wings to their own central area. At which time, the Britannia moved in, our forward vessels moved away, and we opened up with our main gun. This destroyed approximately 60% of the enemy fleet nearly instantly. The majority of their smaller fighter craft, which were in the air at that time, were immediately reduced to flinders. That is a good word.
Like many things that happen, we had to create words for what we've seen.
Yeah. But having been part of developing this weapon with my cousin, who is the scientist who designed the cannon gun, it performed a little bit beyond expectations. I had set the dial from 10 and I created one that went to 12 for giggles. Because everyone else sets their dials to 11 just so they can be over the 10. And I wanted to be over the over there. We buried the dial at what would be about 14 well into the charge-up process. The actual discharge I estimate to be approximately 75% greater than anything we were supposed to have gotten. Possibly we were using better salts for the reactive process, I'm not certain. The devastation what's a nice word for nightmare?
Don't sugarcoat it. It was a nightmare.
The devastation was don't sugarcoat it. It was a nightmare. At that point, my cousin decided, the Prime Minister decided that the only way to ensure that we would not be facing a prolonged war to retake Europe with forces that we do not have, that we must ensure that no swarm forces were able to retreat from the field and retrench on the continent to continue this conflict into an interminable future. Like mongols, we opened up on the retreating troops and
they were no threat.
They would have been a threat within days. We would have been fighting them for months and or years.
But we could have gone about that in the tactical manner that we spoke of to begin with.
We were just following orders.
We were just following orders? I'm glad that you are soulless enough to understand that that can just wipe the slate clean. I can even put my support behind the weapon that we used because it won us the battle. There was no reason to chase these men down and shoot them in the back. It was cowardice, plain and simple. It is easy for a prime minister to sit in a bunker and order us to slaughter these people from behind.
He's not the one up there in the skies hunting these people down.
What good does it do us to win a war if we have to resort to the tactics of our enemy to do it?
It allows the children of Europe to grow up for years in freedom rather than under the heel of swarm oppression. It allows thousands of people who would die in this retracted war of balance and counterbalance, move and counter-move. Thousands, tens of thousands of children dying. Is this what you want, Montgomery?
I want our people and our children to be able to look to our leaders and not have to wonder, are we simply following a new swarm?
They will look to our elected Prime Minister and they will see a man and they will see him with no pennies in their eyes.
We have the gun. We've used it. Now Britain has a weapon that the world knows about.
Britain will not be having the weapon. I've already ordered its dismantling.
It is safe. It's contained.
The plans are being destroyed. There will be no escalation from here.
Can we guarantee that?
How do we know that you won't use this weapon to protect the rest of the world?
Now that people know it's possible, what is to stop them from building one of their own? If we destroy ours, then we're lost.
There was speak that the plans for the Britannia had actually been presented in front of a panel of spies this weekend.
So we were so safe.
I told you there might be spies.
How do we know that this weapon won't be used against America?
I think Britain, the army, should hold on to the weapon, keep it safe, that way we know where it's at all times. Dismantling it leaves the parts around for people and scavengers to take hold of.
No, I am going to dismantle them and place them in distant corners of the world, only traceable through a clever series of hidden riddles which will be scattered around the world and found by a treasure man. I'm sure that would work.
I'm sorry, but
Don't be
this
sorry.
idea so far, you are
I'm not
one
really doing that, Montgomery.
You are one step away from essentially having an evil lair.
Have you been to the pig house back in Bavaria? That's great. We got all the beer there. It's not evil, but it's my lair. We are not going to have an evil lair. We are not going to keep a weapon around that will have other nations vying to build the next super weapon, because if England has super weapon, then we must have super weapon. I don't want that sort of race. I want peace. We need to build peace.
And we also need to build some sort of assembly to make sure that what happened yesterday doesn't happen again.
We can take it apart. We can destroy the plans, we can destroy these pieces, but by executing this attack, we have shown every single survivor at what lengths our Prime Minister is willing to go. We have escalated this beyond what Swarm escalated it in the first place. Once you have pulled this trigger, it cannot be unpulled. So now anyone else that escalates this even to the same level can justify it by saying, you shot first.
Swarm has been executing prisoners on civilians for years. It is a technical and well-accepted practice in military history to mow down retreating enemies. This is an unfortunate reality of Machtpolitik.
Well, maybe that needs to change.
I think
Yes, it does. We need to build more schools, hospitals, and things. That's what I'm saying.
I think the bigger issue here is not the gun. It was the order from Bobbins. A very uncharacteristic move that we should focus on.
It may have seemed uncharacteristic, but I've known the Prime Minister for my entire life. His wheels moving in within wheels. He sees, I don't play chess with him anymore, because he sees many moves ahead. Please trust me. We can trust Lord Bobbins.
And that's the problem.
I can't trust a man who gives an order like that.
Remember your command structure.
Look, through the bloodied and somewhat unsavory history of my country, we have done some major atrocities. But we draw the line at shooting people in the back as they are fleeing.
Like in bloody Kansas.
We now draw the line.
We were just following orders.
Well, if we were just following orders, then I will not stand here and follow orders any longer. Consider this my resignation from your Silverstar crew. If this is how you wish to lead this country, you can do it without me. I am glad that you believe in Uncle Bobbins, but by firing that gun, not only have you seemingly lost your soul, but you have lost your son.
Grange, Pop, share in his sentiment. You stand with us.
Yes, of course. We do live in a free world now, free of Swarm. Thanks to my cousin.
Hello, I'm Alice Harp. I'm a commander in the Silverstar crew. Weapons and heavy artillery are my specialty. You will see no guns on me today. Yesterday I had the greatest weapon, the most dangerous weapon in my hands that will ever be created. I pulled the trigger. I helped to decimate Swarm. It was a very proud moment. And then I was given an order to shoot down those that were waving white flags, those that were retreating, those that had a future to choose a path of righteousness, those that may have been forced into a life in swarm they may not have otherwise chosen for themselves. And I do not support that choice. I do not support the order that was given to me. And with that, I have to resign as well.
The Grange?
Stood with you through this and many other things. As representative of the Americas and the attachés, until your leadership has been reconciled, I'm going to have to step away from this fight for now.
Captain Kroll, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I am a soldier in the British Army. I was raised by a father who served in that army. Doing my duty for Queen, for King, for my country. I will follow orders. I am a good soldier. I am here.
Thank you, Captain Kroll. Commander Lohr, Heinrich, please share your thoughts.
As Commodore of the fleet, while I do not agree with the decisions that were made, it is not my place to question them. Now that the deed is done, now that the end has been achieved, now that peace has been secured, it is the right place of all gentlemen to call as the nations of the world to decide on how we will treat these situations in the future. An armistice must be signed and ratified by the countries of the world, agreeing that a weapon of this type will never be used again. Now that we know its true, awesome, and destructive power, we cannot argue on its effect on the battle against swarm. There can be no argument of the righteousness of destroying that army. And in the course of this discussion, in this gentlemanly debate, we must also acknowledge what has been done, the crimes against people which we have committed. We must face that reckoning with strong shoulders and stiff backs, knowing that we did our duty, even if our duty was wrong.
And it was not wrong. I think the enslaved peoples, the oppressed peoples, the bombed out of existence, the murdered peoples of Central Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the Urals, the Caucasus, China, I think they may have a very different position from the people of England who have escaped so much of the devastation of this war. We must not forget those that swarm destroyed. We must not forget the crimes of our enemies while we blame ourselves for how we handled our fight with them. War is not a pretty business. My goal for the rest of my life is to ensure we have no more of that sort of thing. We have things to build. There should not be airships with guns. There must be hospitals, schools, roads, railway bridges, cool flying casinos. We have a future to build.
But let us not forget, what we have today is a failure of the existing government. When the Prime Minister becomes the king, we need a new representative of the people. I call for democracy across Europe under this new regime.
Yeah? Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, you should do that. Yeah.
All right.
We all agree that's a good idea. Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
They're off to a good start in this democracy.
Register.
There's a significant danger that I might be put in charge of the Germanys. I don't want to take care of everyone. I want them to vote for their own representatives. So, we'll be looking for a lot of help to create voter awareness, get some candidates rolling. We're going to have to build a new representative hall. I think we want people to be excited about being democracy, all representing each other's friends. I think hot tubs in the basement of the legislative body building would be good.
Can we design the spreadsheet of how to vote?
Yes.
Krieger, I have one thing I just always wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Can I have Ireland and make them English again?
That's not how that actually ever worked.
Can I try?
I'm thinking that would be a no. I'm only like a crown prince and junk, but
But they're so Irish.
yeah, that's wonderful. They gave us whiskey on Guinness.
Right, they can stay. You have to eat a lot of whiskey after you guys
And
stay.
those really good breakfast sausages.
Oh yeah, on the breakfast sausage.
Oh, this we put in our English breakfast and
Yeah.
call it our own.
Yeah.
On
yeah.
Irish tea, the Irish breakfast tea,
You mean English breakfast?
they have their own special.
We could
magic
go on
wine.
this all day.
Anyways, yesterday was a devastating time for all the forces of virtue. Because of complications in our fight against the forces of darkness. We have prevailed. Unpleasantries occurred.
Now, as we
Now have to
mentioned,
build. Yeah, thank you so much, I appreciate it. Now we have to build the future that we have always believed in. The future that we thought would be wiped from the earth. We need to build that. All of us must dedicate ourselves. Who stands with me towards building this new future?
now as
Yeah, you look behind you, but I saw you not saying nothing about standing with the future.
we have a guy looking.
We miss it.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, one of the precipitating events of this situation was an attack on Balmoral during a meeting of the government. The Queen, Lords, the House of Commons, the royal family. Really, we've got to stop putting all of our eggs into one basket. It's not a good plan for everything.
No, the basket's a good thing, but yeah.
So we had all the eggs in the one basket. Somebody came along and set it on fire, and we thought we'd hidden the basket really well.
There were no outgoing transmissions from the location in Scotland where we had sequestered the families and the peerage. They left to another location and were rerouted secretly to the location in Scotland. There are only a handful of people who could possibly have known. And therefore we are going to find where those leaks occurred. And we will find the person or persons involved. And we will bring them to an appropriate court-ruled justice.
The outcome of this was discovered to have completely decimated the line of succession, all the way down
So far down,
to Hastings Robert Bobbins, the Prime Minister.
whose mother, being the Earl of I forget, the daughter of the Earl of I forget, because she was a Countess of I forget.
The Court of Heralds has assured us
Yeah.
it's him.
And my mother was her sister. So after his line goes extinct, it's my line. So Mr. Huffy, young man who just walked out, is second in line. He's not happy about that because he doesn't want to be a prince.
Did that you stay so that before Beauregard becomes